Hi, I'm Jeremy. Welcome to our farm and house in progress, Cornucopia Orchards. Today we're up in the attic, and this is going to be my kind of trial area where I can learn what not to do and kind of work on my technique. And I'm going to start all drywall finish, get into the mudding and then the taping, but today I'm going to focus on filling some of the gaps, things like that, or that, which has a piece of broken off drywall in there. So basically just doing a pre-fill. And once we've got that done, then the next step will be taping. So I'm not going to leave anything that's going to protrude out at all. We're not going over any proper tapered edges. We're not going over any nicely butted joints. We're just filling some of the bigger gaps to get a base. So I'm going to be starting with this taping mud and just going to put it on at full thickness. I'm not going to take any water and add it into there to butter it up or anything. We're just going full thick. So I'm starting with just a trough. Never actually used drywall hawk before, but I am excited to use that at some point here. And all I'm trying to do here is just to kind of pre-fill places like this. I'm not trying to completely fill it either. So I'll come back along and make sure I'm not leaving stuff where it's going to be in the way of tape. Just if I can get it just right coming down like that. But I don't want to leave it. There we go, that's pretty good. So I did quite a few spots on that run. There's a little bit left I could have done, but honestly it'll be fine for the next one. The only one that bag didn't get is kind of this corner. And it's a little bit more, it's about 1/4 of an inch, but it'll still fill in when I do the tape. I think will be fine. Everything else is just like making that angle and maybe a little bit there, a little bit here. I think everything else is within reasonability. So could have probably gone the rest of the way up right there. So now I'm just gonna go through and finish making sure. I think Casey said she got all the walls except for half of this one over here and the ceilings. Make sure that all the screws are properly sunk. Well, I wanted to get familiar with this a little bit more and had my son here, so very helpful. But this thing is basically dead. And I'll give it a spin and see if it'll go again, but it stopped. So I was told by the pearls of wisdom on the internet that 750 milliliters was the correct amount of water to add. And I don't know whether that's true or not. That looks nice and creamy anyway. All right. It's my first time with a drywall hawk. I do like it. This is way more comfortable than that trough, that bucket. So I'm just gonna get a few seams done here and kind of get a hang for it. We're gonna start with flats or tapers, some butt joints probably. And I'm gonna work, whenever they intersect, I'm gonna try and work the butt joint first so that it dives into the taper. And then that way, in theory, the taper will go over top of it and it should create a smoother finished product. And I'm only gonna run it to like halfway. I won't run it all the way through. Boy, that is awful creamy. I don't know, maybe that's too much for starting. This is first layer. They did say 750 milliliters and I did 500. Now that I think about it, I should probably work my way up, huh? I keep forgetting. I should work from the bottom because then anything you drip, you can kind of catch it. I'm not good enough yet to have my drywall hawk underneath and be real fancy, but it just sloughs off the extra onto the sides. So that does make sense to me. In the past, I've broken stuff and done rough construction, and my wife has done all the finish work. So this is more or less new to me entirely. Now I've got a blade that's just a hair wider than what I'm working on here. And in theory, that should mean I won't have a situation where I'm pulling any material in a weird way. You know, it should level it out to the sides. So I think a professional might be done with the room by now. Okay, so we're going to do a nasty butt joint here. This is a butt joint that's actually to a tapered edge. I did have a few of these up in the attic, especially where I just had a scrap that was just right, and I didn't want to have to buy another sheet. So it just means you're going to end up using a lot more mud in the start than you would have. People's behind me. Professionals cut with the knife, I've seen, and they also keep the tape like on a hip roll. I don't know. I've learned for a lot of these things, like I would say drywall falls into the same category. Getting the tools the professionals have isn't necessarily going to help you get the results. In fact, a lot of times it can make it harder. If you don't understand the basics, then it can be really hard to deliver good results with an advanced tool. So, day 2, and I was struggling on that first strip I showed you, and I went ahead and did a couple of more, and I did some horizontal work as well. Nothing on the ceiling really after the prefill, but I wanted to take a look at this with you. So yesterday, I kept feeling like I was getting just a ton of bubbles showing up in the paper, and I researched a bunch about what I would need to do to deal with them, and today they're gone. They're just not here. This one was really bad. This one was not great either, but I'm not seeing any bubbles. I do see that it's sucked in all along that joint line. This is a butt joint, and that will fill over just fine. And same over here. It's sucked in along the tape, and you can see the dimpling from the screws, but there's no bubbles. I guess I did just fine. Yeah, I was reading that if you are getting a lot of bubbles, then you're probably a little dry. You need to, some people say put in some Dawn dish soap and that will get rid of your bubbles, and some people say no, don't do that. You just need to wet your tape before you put it on the wall, and some people say you're a hack if you do that. Basically, it seems to just be the Wild West, taping and mudding, and there's no general agreement that I can find anywhere between one person and the next as to what you're supposed to do to get the optimal results. So I was thinking I was gonna have to cut out several sections and redo them, but the bubbles are gone today. So I had this capped overnight, but here we are. This is my mud. Oh yeah, that looks fine. Looks just as good as it did yesterday. Some on the hawk here. And this is Taping Light by USG's Beadex brand. which is like, I think it's something that they bought sometime back. And out here it's still really popular, so they maintain the brand. And I really like it. I think it's really nice mud, and Casey said the same thing instead of the buckets we used to buy. So I've heard that this is done both ways. I like to have the butt joint go underneath the tapered edge because I think that that's going to deliver a more seamless end result. I mean, it's as long as it's not coming out past, probably not really a whole lot of difference, but that's the order that I'm choosing to go in, is butt joints then tapered over top. Excuse me, sir. What on earth? Where are you going and why are you doing it? Alright, bro, whatever. My younger son would say, whatever. Well, okay progress. Looking at pretty much all of the wall work other than the corners being done at this point. And now the children are restless. I think tomorrow I will try and get all of the rest done, so all the ceiling work done, except for all of these angles and then these inside corner between ceiling and wall. So if I just get all of that done on the ceiling, then I can take a day where I at least get the corners bedded in, and then we can start over with the second coat. Definitely wouldn't call the work I've done thus far perfect, and I'm learning a lot as I go. And one of the nice things is that really all you can do is just make it harder on yourself. It's gonna take more time at each step, sort of kind of like a sanding. And what I'm doing is I'm looking for anywhere where I didn't feather it out properly. You know, the pressure on the side where you're further away from your joint wasn't sufficient, or I just didn't catch like that there's a little glob that went somewhere I wasn't expecting. And you can get a lot of that off just with your blade at, you know, a 45 or greater degree angle. Probably more than 45, it's probably more like 60, I think. Something about like that to the wall instead of, you know, out a little bit more. And that just gives you, you know, a good enough versus sanding, unless it's something particularly atrocious and not something that's likely to be covered. I don't think I'm going for another coat today, but it's a good way for me to figure out, you know, what I'm doing wrong. Maybe that one's catching. Now that you can look really close and watch it, I'll see if I can mess it up for you. How's that sound? Sounds about like par for the course for me anyway. So I'm gonna kind of just take off most of what's on there to begin with, but leave enough to where it'll squeeze to the sides when I get my tape on. And if I were better at this, I would probably use my blade to cut, but I'm not very good, so I'm not going to. Put it right there. I'll just tear it real quick. I'm gonna push that all the way down into that little crack there, and this one's just gonna come up right to the center line here where all the joints are meeting. I'll just kind of give it a quick once through, get some mud on the blade, and I'm going to press in and then just come up. So this joint has about a 1/4 inch gap at the top, which is as big as I would like to be at most, without pre-filling. Seems to be anything more than that's going to cause me a problem, but I can deal with that much. On these flats, I also don't care whether I'm using my smaller blade or my larger blade. I like the 5 to start out when it's the tapered edge, because then it fits inside the taper, and I can get, you know, the tape down a little bit more solidly into and good contact with the actual sheets. Whereas the 6, if I'm doing it right, it glides on the outside. That nice and pressed in there before I try and do anything over the top of it, really. I'm happy with that. Got these all done except for the length. So now we're going to pick our spot, and it's going to come to about here. So I'm just going to match it up on the glue line with basically here. So I'm just going to go ahead and start there. And the best way to work it into the line between the sheets is, in this case, it's perpendicular. So in this case, it's up. So I got to work kind of back and forth as I go. So some things I've learned so far. When you're using this, you can, and I've not gotten very good at it yet, kind of keep it right where you're working and it will catch the drips for you. When you're working on any kind of a vertical, which is pretty much all the time, you want to work upwards in order to avoid having a whole bunch just fall on the floor. Sometimes that's not really possible. As much as you can, it seems to be beneficial also to work in one direction, but I've found when you're working with longer sections of tape, it isn't moving around any. I don't have it bunching up. I haven't had that problem at all on any of these longer sections. Once you've got it started, and so that's why that first part's critical. You want to make sure that you're holding that, and then you start embedding the tape, and I haven't had any issues at that point with it coming and bunching, you know, the other direction. And I kind of work the material back and forth as I go. I know that's not the way you're supposed to do it. I've seen people who are so much faster than me, but it works. And I find that it seems to be an even workflow for me, and it allows me to put on enough material to where I can then take off and get the right amount. And if I don't do that, then I end up with pockets where there should be material, especially in those tapered edges. So this isn't hot mud, so I have some time that I can use it on the caulk, and it's not a problem. But definitely you want to make sure that you're keeping it cleaned. So I try and make sure that I've got all the stuff that's around and about to the center periodically, just to keep it all in a pile. That way it's not going to dry out as fast. And when I'm doing screw cover, you want to make sure you don't have too much on there. So just a little bit, put it on, take almost all of it off again. Buddy? crackers.
One, no,
Oh, you bought more?
no. I want some. And no, I didn't do more. I just have to get them.
And you can't?
And it's raining.
Oh, I know it's raining. So I'm done for the day. I got a little bit left. Not much in here. And you can see I've just given it a nice thorough coating of water. It's gonna get quite a bit added to it tomorrow. You know, basically another one of these boxes, these taping boxes can go in there. At which point the rest of this is going in there, about 750 milliliters or 500 or whatever, somewhere in the range. I think first time I did about 500 and that was pretty nice. And so I'm just gonna cap this tonight and that should be just fine. I got all the stuff off the sides pretty well, so anything that would dry, I'm not worried about. I have a particular way I've been cleaning my knives. I don't think it's the proper way to clean your knives. I also just take off most of the rest of the hardened stuff, just blade to blade, and that seems to do a really nice job. I'm cleaning these up. Just gotta be careful you don't run it into your hand. These are stainless steel, which I don't think the ones in the store are typically stainless. I think they're aluminum. And so they're gonna stay sharper, they're gonna last a little bit better for me. And I only needed them to last this job, but I really didn't want to have to deal with, you know, not having a proper tool for the job when they're not hardly more expensive. They're a little more expensive, but not much. And so on stuff like that, I will typically buy the better quality. And so far, these blades have been great. I haven't had any complaints about them. So I ended up doing the ceiling, at least the first run through today, minus the spots like I kind of had talked about. And I feel like I'm getting faster, and that's always a good feeling. Today, I definitely got a fair amount done. You know, I did both the sides all the way across and the top. So I'm happy. So basically the interior corners aren't done and the exterior corners aren't done. These are the, you know, around this box around the stairs, that's the exterior corners that we'll need done. And other than that, you know, we're pretty close to done with the first floor, or first coat up here. I do have some spackling on the ceiling. I'm not gonna take time to do today. The kids are sick and they're downstairs watching a show and I got them 100% prepared and I've checked on them a couple of times, but it'd be good to get them inside and get them some soup or something, you know, and then just read to them. So we're gonna call that for today. The only thing I didn't do other than the speckling on the ceiling is each of these cans and, you know, like the smoke alarm that's up here, I like to just butter in some stuff around that. I did try and seal the, you know, these in the exterior wall and in the ceiling with a electrical grade caulk at the back. And all of these cans are rated as not just insulation contact, but also as being airtight. Now, I don't know that they're really airtight, but they're a lot better than the old ones. And I think if I make sure the drywall is really well sealed to it, then there will be a minimum amount of air passing through those. I mean, that's kind of the goal, right? This is the air barrier on this floor, is the roof assembly, specifically the drywall. Everywhere else, it's the zip system. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, think about sticking around. Hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you on the next one. I hope you have a great rest of your day.